And so, Colonel, I do have your Substack information here, but you can also invite our viewers to other things that you do. So please give your little background as well.
Okay. Yeah. I have the Substack. That's where the things that I write, I try to write pretty frequently. And then I'm a member of the Eisenhower Media Network, which was formed several years ago by one of the guys who had the Ben and Jerry's ice cream. Which one is it? Ben, I guess. So he formed this Eisenhower Media Network, and it's a bunch of retired guys, really retired guys and gals, mainly military, some like FBI and stuff like that. People who are either whistleblowers or just very interested in talking. And I think Monty would be a great member of that because of his background, having seen all of these over time, how it evolves. And, it doesn't get better when it comes to how the U.S. government conducts itself overseas. It hasn't gotten any better. And you've witnessed that. And I've only seen it really from inside the Pentagon, and from just reading history, but you've actually been there and observed it with your two eyes, especially, the civilian commander of Iraq. Who was it? Who was the guy, the civilian from the State Department? Anyway, he reminds me of Tony Blair, whose name is brought up as in terms of our 20-point peace plan for Gaza, which is it really isn't. But anyway, yeah, I spent 20 years in the Air Force, retired in 2003. And I was kind of a whistleblower that last year because I happened to be working side by side with the Office of Special Plans, which was preparing all kinds of interesting classified propaganda that they were picking and choosing to send out to the media, friendly media, of course, New York Times, Washington Post, to kind of justify that second invasion of Iraq that happened in March of 2003. And of course, the WMDs, well, they didn't find any. That's funny. How come they didn't find any? Because we knew there weren't any. That was a lie. And of course, Saddam Hussein being allied in some way with bin Laden, and anybody who knows anything about Middle Eastern politics of the late 1900s and early 2000s would know that Saddam Hussein was a Marxist atheist, really, and he was a Sunni, and he did not had nothing in common with the movement that bin Laden was a part of, and certainly had no love for the Saudis, which of course bin Laden, as is well known to people in our government, is a Saudi. He's a member of the royal family, extended royal family, which is quite large, but he's a member, very wealthy. His father was very wealthy. So, all of this stuff is just made up for the American people. And I got to see that, which I was surprised at because I wasn't well prepared to recognize and understand what our government did. And Monty mentioned the Iran-Contra. Now, my brother was in the Marines at the time of Iran-Contra. I was in the Air Force. And I remember when it was in the news and Ollie North was this wearing his little Marine uniform and doing what he did. And I thought, well, he's getting a lot of media coverage. I'll ask my brother what he thinks. I said, what about that Ollie North? And he said, the Marines are shamed by him. They're shamed because of, illegalities and conducting their own foreign policy, or I shouldn't say their own foreign policy, conducting neoconservative foreign policy, which has been a constant throughout. But anyway, I'm glad Monty's here because I want to pick his brain a little bit.
Well, thank you so much, Colonel. And I'm really very excited that I have the two of you to open up our conversation. And as the whole world knows that we have this 20 peace point plan that Trump announced not too long ago, and both him and Prime Minister Netanyahu were together when they also announced that. And personally, I was excited to hear that, although there's so many things that I needed to understand. And of course, you always have some doubts whether is it really for peace, or is it really just a delayed tactics, or is it really just a power play? Because having watched also on witness the video that took place when Netanyahu was speaking, was about to deliver his UN address or speech, We know that majority of the representatives from the world's nations, most majority of them left and really boycotted Netanyahu. So with that in itself tells us that the world wants the Gaza genocide to stop. So here we are, and we would like really to dissect and be able to understand the military, diplomatic, and moral implications of the 20 peace point plan. And it's really happening fast because yesterday I saw this, and it is President Donald Trump's post, and saying that, and it says, "I am very proud to announce that Israel and Hamas have both signed off on this first phase of our peace plan. This means that all of the hostages will be released very soon, and Israel will withdraw their troops to an agreed and line upon line as the first steps toward a strong, durable, and everlasting peace. All parties will be treated fairly. This is a great day for the Arab and Muslim world, Israel, all surrounding nations, and the United States of America. And we thank the mediators from Qatar, Egypt, and Turkey who worked with us to make this historic and unprecedented event happen. So blessed are the peacemakers." And signed, Donald J. Trump, President of the United States of America. So perhaps we could start with this, and it sounds really good. But when Reza, who would be joining us soon, asked me, "So what questions do you have in your mind?" And of course, the main question that I have in my mind is, will this benefit the Palestinians? So that's the main thing that I have in my mind. So, but formally, maybe in the first point, he wrote there, it was written and agreed upon that there will be ceasefire and hostage release. So maybe how can it be guaranteed that all hostages released before any troop withdrawal? So that's what I was thinking from military lens, for Colonel, and Monty can share too. So, and how does that secure peace, or does it just set a tactical trap?
Yeah. Well, when the 20 points were first published, it looked like each of the 20 points should have had with it an appendix of some sort or a chapter that laid out the specifics, because it was very vague. And a lot of the details, even dates, even times, even withdrawal points that the Israelis would have to do, even the exchanges of prisoners. So it was very vague. It was very top level, kind of superficial. And they didn't publish or even talk about the details, an appendix of the chapter. So that concerned me. So it looked very much like an advertisement for a peace plan rather than an actual peace plan. So there's that. The other big problem, of course, is there was no Palestinian involvement in developing this plan. The Palestinians the Gazans particularly, are represented through their friends in Qatar, which they do have friends in Qatar to some extent. Their friends in Egypt, which they don't really have big friends in Egypt, I don't think, advocates in Egypt. And then, of course, Turkey, who is known to be a very opportunistic state when it comes to anything that goes on in the region. It looks after Turkey, number one, and that's fine. That's national interest. I understand that. So, but no Palestinian involvement directly. The other thing is, even though, and I saw on X just a bit ago, just this morning, and you can find these all over, the people are celebrating. People in Gaza are celebrating. People in the region are celebrating. People in Israel are celebrating. They're saying this is going to bring an end to the war. So there is that sense of optimism, and particularly among the Gazans, who have been suffering so terribly with really no ability to fight back. You have Hamas, which is very small, and it's it's not even like you could say the Gazan army. It's more like a Gazan militia, if anything. It's very small. It doesn't have huge capabilities. So the people who have been bombed and killed and starved and economically deprived, and treated like they're all terrorists, men, women, and children. They're happy because this means possibly they can go back home and start to rebuild. They can have the firing, the bombing stop. However, and Hamas is agreeing to this, which they didn't actually think that it would, because there are some sticklers in those 20 points that you could see why Hamas would not be interested in doing that. But Israel, who Trump keeps saying Netanyahu has agreed to this, Netanyahu will comply with this. First off, he's saying my Knesset, my parliament has to approve it. That doesn't happen till tonight, which technically is before our night. It might be happening right now. I don't know, but the Knesset must approve it. So this is one out that Netanyahu has kept for himself. And the other thing is what Netanyahu has been saying to his own people in Israel. And he's basically saying, we're running Gaza. We're going to control Gaza. Gaza's going to do what we tell it to do. It's going to be just like it was before October 7th, except fewer Gazans, basically, where they controlled all of the trade, input, output, all the food that goes in and out, and kept it as a armed concentration camp. So plus Netanyahu in this 20-point plan has gained increased territory. They have the Netzarim corridor. I don't think they're vacating the Netzarim corridor. That divides Gaza into two. And also on the eastern side of Gaza, from basically all of the land border of Gaza, there is an increased, stepped up, multi-kilometer security zone that has been added to all the other security zones that Israel has built. So, and then of course, how do you get Israel to comply? Israel says on the hostage trading. So Hamas gives back the hostages, and Israel said, well, we're going to release a bunch of uncharged, up to, I don't know how many it was, thousands of uncharged Palestinians and other Palestinians that we have in jail, etc. We'll give those back. Well, that requires details. That requires an ability to enforce that. And Netanyahu cannot be trusted. And I'm not saying because he's not that he's naturally untrustworthy. It is because he has a track record of lying consistently. So this is a big problem. But anyway, the people seem to be cheering. So I'm hoping that level of optimism carries over into the policy, which isn't very well put together, in my opinion.
Thank you, Colonel. And as the people perhaps in Gaza are cheering, but it doesn't seem like Netanyahu is cheering much about it.
Oh, no, not Netanyahu. No, the people in Israel that are happy are not Netanyahu's coalition. It is not the hard right. It is not the ones that wanted to ethnically cleanse completely and kill all the Gazans. And so, I think that was totally the intent, to kill every Gazan, or to force them to exit. And actually, that's one of the interesting things that's positive about the 20-point plan versus what Trump put out many months ago. Initially, he was going to redevelop it. Gazans could leave, but they couldn't come back. This 20-point plan does say guaranteed right of return for any Gazan, even Gazans who left sometime during the 2-year war. Gazans that leave after the 20 points are signed, they can come back. And I think, I don't know how meaningful that is. It sounds good. I think it's but again, I don't trust Netanyahu. I don't think anybody in the Middle East trusts Netanyahu. And Trump knows Netanyahu, and he knows that Netanyahu lies to him. He knows this. He has plenty of evidence of this. And so he knows that he himself can't trust Netanyahu. Now, will that make Trump, who wants his Nobel Peace Prize, he wants this prize so badly he can taste it, but will that desire to be seen as a peacemaker, will it cause him to try to control Netanyahu more than he has? Because he hasn't controlled him very much at all. He pretty much has obeyed Netanyahu up to this point. So it's an interesting thing. And I think the fact that many in the world are cheering Trump because he forced this issue. Trump hasn't done much, but he's probably the only person in the world that has any ability at all to force Netanyahu to do something short of engaging in a military combat with Israel, right? I mean, this is a militarized state. It does what it wants. But Trump has some diplomatic power, some power of persuasion, some power of finances over Netanyahu. And if he chooses to exercise it, maybe they can come through and some of those 20 points will be delivered on.
Well, I want to share this article from, this is from Joaquin Flores that he posted, and he has been writing for Strategic Culture. And it says here that Netanyahu may yet call it diplomacy, but the world sees, let's see, they're so small. Hold on. That something else is happening. And when I was reading this article, and I'm posting it here because I think I strongly encourage our audience to look for this article. And it says one of the key point there, and it could be also an argument to others, is that the Trump overtook Netanyahu's Gaza policy. That this article frames the Israel-Gaza peace deal as not just as a diplomatic breakthrough, but a public staging of hierarchy, portraying Netanyahu as having lost control and become subordinate to Trump. And I want this also to be shared, because I remember many months ago when a friend of mine also who was awake, and yet she was so concerned that Trump was, remember that meme that went viral when Trump was pulling the chair?
Oh, yes.
So, and so most people who really loves our country and who wants our freedom and sovereignty was like, what is he doing? So, and I do believe I have trust that Trump knows what he's doing. So I thought this has so much great points in this article. But before we continue, Colonel, I want to just ask to welcome also Drago Bosnich. And Drago, if you want to, introduce a little bit of yourself. Oh, but I hear a little bit of echo, but I will mute myself.
So sorry about that. My technical side of things is not very well on my side. It's a pleasure to be here. Of course, I'm a geopolitical and military analyst for BRICS. And yeah, I mean, what Colonel and you mentioned just now, it's unfortunately it shows us that really the Israel is way too powerful for such a small country, especially. And Tucker Carlson actually said a few days ago that Netanyahu is going around the Middle East and saying that he controls the United States, and he's not saying it in metaphors or anything. He says it directly. He's telling this to Arab leaders that he controls the United States and he can do whatever he wants. And we see that this government that controls Israel now is largely extremist. And I mean, if they were in any other country, we would call them right-wing or extreme right-wing extremists. And they're even, we can even call them religious extremists, because some of them have been saying things like, other people are not the chosen people, and so on and so on. So I think most secular Jews would really be appalled by this, and they are appalled by this. But when it comes to from some extremists who are not really consequential, that's not that much of an issue. But when it comes from ministers or prime ministers or government officials, that of course is a problem, especially when the country that they control has nuclear weapons, has a massive military that's getting tens of billions of dollars from the United States every year, and of course, if it's true that they control the U.S. government, it's even scarier to really think about what they can do or what they want to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's true. That's true. Trump is known for, his personality, and this is even like long before he even ran for president. He is a person who is confident, but he's also proud of himself. He's a proud person, and he is very competitive. He's very competitive, and Netanyahu, and really all the people that deal with Trump. Trump will build up the people. He'll say, this is a great guy. This is the greatest appointment I've ever made, all this stuff. But it is very clear who's in charge, because Trump needs to be in charge. He is a in charge guy. That's where he's comfortable. That's how he has to operate. And with Netanyahu, we see that is being pushed to the limit. There is no doubt that Trump, who spends time on social media and talks to all kinds of people in and outside of his circle, that he missed that meme that was going viral, making fun of him for pulling out Netanyahu's chair and appearing to be submissive. And there's worse memes than that build on how submissive Trump is to Netanyahu. I mean, they are all over, right? So this is not something that Trump likes at all, and he won't tolerate it. And given that he's almost 80 years old, he has built his life. He has achieved pretty much everything except the Nobel Peace Prize. He's achieved everything so far that he possibly could want. And he's wealthy. He has a nice family. All three of his ex-wives were once deceased, but they all liked him after the divorce. So, I mean, seriously, the man has everything a person could want. And he does not need Netanyahu to put him down, to boast about how Netanyahu pulls the strings. So I know he doesn't like it. I also think, though, on the other hand, I think that Netanyahu has the ability to greatly embarrass Trump. I think the Mossad, and whether Netanyahu completely controls it, let's assume that he does. I believe that they can. And I didn't hear Warren's deep dive on the assassination of Charlie Kirk, but I have no doubt, and the history books have no doubt, that the Mossad is quite capable of reaching out and tapping people wherever it wants, however it wants, and they can blame it on anybody they want, and they can do this. And I remember when after the pager attack of Hezbollah, that Netanyahu came to the White House and he gave gold, I don't know if it's gold plated or gold painted, I don't know which, probably plated, gold plated pager for Trump and silver plated pagers for some of Trump's cabinet members. The CIA guy, I think, got a silver one. Trump got a gold-plated pager in the model of what Mossad had used against Hezbollah. I personally, if somebody like Netanyahu, who had conducted that kind of an indiscriminate but well-planned attack on the leadership of their enemies, gave me a symbol of what he had done and said, here, why don't you just keep this by your desk? I would see that as a threat. Maybe I'm paranoid. I would read that as a threat. And I don't know how Trump saw it, but I think Trump is a little more like a normal person than others. And I think he did see it kind of as a threat. So I do think Netanyahu does hold some sway over Trump and Trump's family, because, you know, Trump's daughter, his favorite daughter, right? Is it Ivanka, I don't know which, his daughter who married Kushner, who Jared Kushner, of course, is big time into this 20-point plan. I noticed he was not mentioned in the tweet that you held up that Trump just put out. He didn't thank Kushner, but that guy is his son-in-law, and his grandchildren are the children of that guy. So there are many ways to hurt Trump. I'm just saying, there's many ways to hurt Trump without killing him. And I think that Netanyahu intimates that that's certainly possible if Trump doesn't play ball. On the other hand, Trump's own sense of pride really causes him to push back a little bit against Netanyahu. Because Trump actually believes, you know, I'm the most powerful man in the world, not Netanyahu. He says he's the most powerful man, and he's competitive. So there's a little bit of hope there. And I'm glad people are cheering Trump at the same time that they are denigrating Netanyahu. That's not to say either one of them are great people, but, you know, Netanyahu is a mass murderer, convicted in the court of public opinion, and probably very convictable if we had any type of trial. So it's good to see that he is being put down a little bit. But at the same time, you know, that Israel has no intention. The Israeli government of right now, it reflects the murderous opinion that most Israelis have. 80% agree the Gazans should be gone. And they don't really care how they're gone. They don't care if they're shipped out. They don't care if they're buried under rubble. They die of disease or starvation, or they're just shot. They do not care. And I believe Netanyahu's government is in alliance with that view. So I don't really know how to be hopeful for this.
Thanks, Colonel. And the same friend of mine who made a comment about that pulling the chair said recently, I thought Hitler was the worst. I think Netanyahu is the worst than Hitler. That's what she said, because she comes from the culture also in that part of Europe that was once under Hitler. So she remembered, she remembered all of her family story. So, Warren, Monty, Drago, any more thoughts you want to share with Karen?
Well, just regarding the pager, I think it's anything but paranoid to think that that's a threat, and I really think it is, because I mean, why would you give someone the weapon that you use, in such an attack, unless you want to give them a message, hey, I could do the same thing to you. So I don't think it's paranoid at all to think that's the case. I think many people realize that just how dangerous organizations are, like Mossad. They have a totally different way of doing things than most other security forces or security intelligence organizations, because they have no qualms about targeting civilians if that's going to be good for the operation that they're conducting. And we've seen that when they attacked Iran, there were people who were killed along with their families. So they would target an entire house filled with 15 or 40 or 50 children, and they didn't care that they killed a bunch of children as long as they got one guy that they wanted to get. So again, I think these are very, very dangerous people, and I think most of the world sees it now, especially because they've actually become quite arrogant. They don't really care anymore. They know everybody knows that they're powerful, and now they just they don't give a damn anymore as to how they're perceived.
Yeah, no, I think that's for sure, and it is a sign in some ways of desperation, because for many years, if you can kind of not really talk about how dangerous Mossad is and the kinds of things that it does, that it has admitted to, that we have plenty of evidence of the kind of murders that it does, and it will kill Jews too. I mean, it's not like we'll just kill Palestinian or Arab children. They will kill Jewish people. This is part of the Hannibal Directive, which is built into the view: if to preserve Israel we have to kill Jews, they'll do that. But it was kind of like, discussed, but not really in polite society. But now it is out in the open. People know that. And so they kind of are at, when everybody knows how dangerous, when everybody knows you have a baseball bat in your hand, you're going to hit somebody in the head with it. Guess what? Now we're prepared for it. Now we know, you know what? You've got that baseball bat. You're not welcome in my house. Don't come near me. And they're exposed in that way. And I think that is a little bit of a desperate condition. And I just want to mention, and of course you all know about this, of course, but the idea of the Samson option, that if Israel really becomes seriously in danger of collapse, failure, assault, they're losing a war, they have targets in the United States. So it's like, if you don't protect us, our last gasp will be to destroy the world. Your world, because Americans, we're really the only ones that truly really support Israel in every way. I think Europe likes to sell and buy things from the Israeli military. They like to share intel if they can. Most of the European countries will stand up for Israel, but I think the real money that supports Israel comes from the United States, whether it's private Zionists in this country or the government itself, which sends, I don't know, what is it, 31 billion. William Hartung did a study just out yesterday or so, and it's 31 billion has been given since October 7th, and this is on top of the normal annual giving that we give to Israel.
I just want to add something regarding the Samson option. It's incredible as to how very few people know about this. I mean, for me, I know that because of my line of work, I know about it, obviously, and I've known about it for ages, but it's incredible how very few other people know about it. And I'm not going to name names, but recently when I was in China, I met a nuclear scientist from Argentina, and she's an incredible woman. I mean, she's a brilliant scientist, but she didn't know about the Samson option, and she pretty much refused to believe it until I showed her that there's even a big Wikipedia page about it. And then I talked about the Jericho 3 ICBMs that the Israeli army fields. Now, a very good question for anyone who doubts the existence of the Samson option. Well, what's the Jericho 3 for? Israel doesn't need Jericho 3 to strike Iran, but it has missiles. These Jericho 3 missiles they can reach Moscow, they can reach Washington D.C., they can reach even Beijing. So why would they need this missile? I mean, there's no logical explanation unless there's the Samson option. So the Samson option is the only logical explanation as to why these missiles exist. And of course, we know that it's part of the Israeli doctrine. We know they would do it in a heartbeat if they were jeopardized.
Yeah, I think this is a big problem because the government and the Zionists, the strong, life or death Zionists in the government, they're happy with the policy, the military strategy. They're happy with Jericho. They're happy with Samson. They're happy with a Mossad that goes around the world and assassinates people and does other things. I mean, we could talk. I don't know if you watched Tucker Carlson, but he's got a huge anniversary type multi-part series on 9/11. And part of that talks about the Israeli role there, which there was one, unfortunately. And he's exposing that. So people are getting the message now. But how do you get rid of the Jericho missiles? How do we reverse their security policy? The people of Israel, it is a democracy, a parliamentary system. If the people of Israel decided to elect a different government, then they could change their security policy. But how likely is that to happen? I don't see it because the polls in Israel very much, they may not like Netanyahu. They know he's a crook. They don't like who is the guy? The two big guys that are so far right and always talking about ethnic cleansing. Bezalel is his first name.
Maybe Weir or
Gavir. Yeah, well, so these guys are part of his government and they're terrible. So they have their own constituency. I don't see how their system, their political system, would be able to deliver a serious change in Israel's security and nuclear policy, which endangers the world, not just the neighbors, which we see on a daily basis, but it endangers the world. So how do you change that? If the people won't change it, I think you have to cut their money off. Certainly the United States needs to do that. And again, the voices in America that are saying cut them off are growing. Those voices are growing.
Absolutely. I think it's even possible. I talked to a Russian nuclear scientist. He was also in the military. And he explained to me in detail how much power you need to maintain nuclear weapons. So you need not just facilities, you need an enormous amount of power to maintain those nuclear weapons. And we know that the vast majority of resources that Israel has to maintain a nuclear arsenal comes from the United States. And in essence, the crazy part is the U.S. is essentially financing the mousetrap that's designed to destroy it. And if this financing stops, then of course these weapons wouldn't function. The problem is, who can guarantee that they won't launch them as soon as the United States, cuts the funding?
That's right. Now, in the way that AIPAC works, the way they lobby and threaten and run their own candidates, the AIPAC, which speaks for Netanyahu, there's no doubt Netanyahu's 30 years, AIPAC 30 years, or 40 years for AIPAC. But I mean, the voice is the same. They run Congress. Okay. They own both parties, overwhelmingly. They cannot tolerate even the slightest aberration. They're spending millions of dollars to try to primary Thomas Massie for the second or third time now. And I think Marjorie Taylor Greene is putting herself in the primary target because, obviously she's saying cut the budget to Israel, which we should do. That's the right thing to do. But they own our government and they spend a lot of money. And of course, the famous thing from the last week is $7,200, $300 for a positive post on Israel and social media, right? They've recruited media influencers or whatnot. Now, that means that it's very, very important for Israel, to control the voting American and to control the people that those voting Americans vote for and put into Congress. It's extremely important, which is a sign of vulnerability. And I think it feeds into the Charlie Kirk thing too. Charlie Kirk. I've been familiar with TPUSA for a long time, but I'm older. I'm not the college target crowd of that, but I understood how powerful it was. I had pegged Charlie Kirk years ago as a Zionist, and so I wasn't a big follower or like cheering TPUSA on. I did not contribute to TPUSA or anything like that. But when this happened, and even actually before it happened, we could see Kirk making some pushback against Netanyahu, particularly, and against Israel policy, against Zionism, because Charlie Kirk is a debater. He is a person who, he liked to make an argument. And when you make the argument against Israel, guess what? You're probably right. There's plenty of evidence that we shouldn't be doing the things that we're doing in support of Israel. And he's learning this. But the fact that he was assassinated in such a strange way, a very symbolic way. And I also, now you have to admit, I am a little paranoid. I saw the Charlie Kirk assassination as a direct threat to Trump as well. A rooftop shooter of a young, skinny guy that nobody knew, came out of nowhere, had no reason to do it. And here's a shot that, in Trump's case, barely missed him. I mean, I guess it hit his ear. In this other case, it was shot almost in the same target, right? In the upper neck, if you can believe everything that we see. And then, of course, the story after on who they said it was and all these things, all of these stories seemed so obviously contrived, embarrassing, I'm sure, to the FBI, embarrassing to the police and everything. So I saw that as a sign. And I didn't even, and then when Netanyahu denied it 5 minutes after it happened, he said, don't blame Israel, we didn't do it. How strange is that? How strange is that? I think they're very concerned about losing popular support amongst the coming generations in this country, the future voters, the current voters that are in their 20s and 30s. And then those people will be congressmen in their 40s and 50s. They will be the big donors as they build their businesses and become politically supportive. And they don't like Israel. And Charlie Kirk was leading them in that direction. So I think what I'm saying is I think Israel is worried. I think they're very highly vulnerable to American public opinion. I think they know it, and I think they're increasingly desperate. And something like knowledge of American knowledge of the Samson option would do nothing but increase the disgust that most Americans have for the government of Israel right now.
Colonel, so out of the 20 points, which would be like the key points there that we needed to really study, or maybe, and what could be the caveats of the 20 piece point?
Oh my gosh. Well, throughout the 20 points, many things are pointed out and asked for, but there is no guarantees. There's no measurements. Like I said, the idea of a chapter and appendix for each one of those 20 points. If this has been a 20 chapter or even a 20 page document that said, okay, Israel will pull back at a certain point once hostages are released. Where will they pull back to? Okay, phase 1 has a line. Where is that line? And then how is that enforced? Okay, there's no enforcement anywhere. And Israel has the power on the ground in terms of military power. So enforcement is a critical aspect of this, because Israel's the one, these men, women, and children are not firing back as they're getting massacred and having their cities knocked down on top of them. So they don't really have power other than to survive. Their power is in their lives. But how is Israel, who has the military power, how do you hold them accountable? How do you say, well, if anybody breaks the ceasefire, because right now they're still shooting, right? They're shooting at Palestinians, IDF soldiers. Okay, is there punishment for those IDF soldiers? Has the command gone out that this is how it works? I think it's a very tiny war in many ways, right? It's 25 miles by 12 miles, surrounded by this massive military, huge intelligence, Palantir everywhere. And yet the IDF soldiers don't know that the peace plan has been agreed to and it's pending the Knesset approval. How can you say that? Because those are the kinds of things that you would quantify. So how do you enforce Israel's compliance? And this is also goes with the track record that Israel has of never honoring anything that they sign. This is a big problem. Okay. If you were, if you were making a deal with someone who had already swindled you 3 times in a row, wouldn't you get a lawyer or maybe a sheriff to kind of oversee this? Well, there's nothing like that in this. The other thing, of course, is the complete demilitarization. To me, demilitarization means all military pulls back, but the Israelis aren't touched by the demilitarization. When they say demilitarization, they are talking largely of Hamas being disarmed and leaving the country. Then they said, well, you can leave Hamas, if they lay down their arms, they won't be kicked out. We can rehabilitate them in some way. There was something like that in there. Well, really? That requires more data. I'd like to know what that is, because if I was Hamas dealing with Israelis, all the years that they've dealt with them, you're going to throw your arms down and let them treat you fairly? I think it's interesting that Trump keeps using, we're going to treat everybody fairly. He knows that that's the weakest part of this, that there is no fairness here at all. And there's no enforcement mechanism. So he's trying to, emphasize, it will be fair. Trust us. We're not going to screw you over. Well, that's a hard thing to do in that environment. They are going to get screwed over. They've been screwed over since 1948. What really tells me that they're not going to be screwed over now? I don't know. So again, enforcement, what the ramifications are if either party or any party, stops at a certain point. So phase 1 starts, but then Israel starts bombing again. Okay, now what? Do we continue with negotiations, or do we just say, okay, throw that one away? Let's start from scratch. So there's that. For Gazans, this is the first time since Trump has been involved in this talking of peace. It's the first time that Gazans have been told that they're not going to be forced to leave. And if they do leave, they will be allowed back in. Okay, great. Sounds great. How? How do you enforce that? Because if I'm a starving Gazan and peace breaks out, I might want to go see my relatives. I might want to get out of this country, get some nutrition, get some peace for a second. And then because I've been told I can come back, and then I leave the country. And then I say, well, I'm trying to come back. And they go, well, Israel's controlling the borders. They'll be processing your visa. Well, that's not, okay, is that what they envision? None of that's written down. We don't know how they're going to do that. But what we do know is Israel has repeatedly, Netanyahu, Ben-Gvir, all these guys have repeatedly said they want the Gazans gone. And if they leave, they're not coming back. Okay, so we know where Israel stands on this. And now we have said, oh, no, you can come back. You can leave. You can come back. It's all good. Really? I don't trust that. And I don't trust Trump either, because Trump wants the Peace Prize. He doesn't care 6 months from now how this works out. He wants to be able to say, I ended the war. And listen to Trump already. I ended 6 wars in 6 months. 7th is Ukraine. And then now 8 will be Gaza. That's all he cares about, is the top line. So I am very worried that there aren't protections. And then, of course, how many Palestinians will be involved in governing Gaza? How many Gazans will be involved? They said Hamas can't do it. Well, they're actually the only government. They're the elected government of Gaza since 2006, I believe. But they're the only people with the experience running Gaza. So they're not going to be part of the governing coalition. They said Palestinian Authority, very corrupt, not the same group. Oh, we'll have a PA representative that Israel picks, that Israel chooses. Okay. I don't understand how superficial this is. And I understand that they want the war to stop, of course, and it should. And Israel should pull back and pay reparations, in my opinion, serious reparations. But, I don't see how that 20 points is going to make any of that happen. And I honestly, Trump is so vain and so desirous of the world to pat him on the back and say what a great guy he is, that he's forgotten the fundamentals here. And I don't see what's for Gazans except the Israelis will stop bombing you for a short time. And you may or may not be able to leave and come back. But we're going to say that you can. But we control the borders. Israel controls the borders. And Tony Blair, that's a whole nother story. How can you even mention Tony Blair in the Middle East? I mean, what is that? Is that like, are they stupid? Is Trump stupid? Because, and really, is Qatar and Egypt and Turkey stupid? for allowing Tony Blair's name to be mentioned in association with this. Makes no sense.
Well, I guess we have to wait and see what happens. But let's hear from Monty, maybe because you seem to be having a lot of problem with your Wi-Fi, so I better ask you to share something already. Monty, can you hear us?
Yes, we'll give it a try again. In Mexico, I just don't have much success with my internet at times. But I've been looking at this and very suspect of the whole peace plan. I believe I'd like to quote something here from in a discussion that was had with Sam Husseini, who's a journalist and often well noted. He had an interview with Craig Makabar, who was the representative for the United for Peace resolution, which I really had hope in insofar as a means by which immediate relief could be accomplished in this area. But it appears to be obscuring reality insofar as this 20-point plan. I'm very suspect of it in that it appears more of a PR campaign. In other words, people are desperate all around the world for some settlement, for some kind of peace. I mean, it's horrific to view this. The Palestinians are suffering terrible. At the same time, Trump is desperate for some kind of success somewhere where he's not getting. I mean, we really have the Ukraine war continuing on. We have the confrontation with Iran, Venezuela now, and Trump is desperate for something. So I think he's trying to maybe cut a business deal of some sort. But I just don't believe. I think it's something like the Minsk II, where something's being put out for hope to buy some time, and perhaps there'll be a prisoner exchange. But I just don't believe that Hamas and the other, I think there's up to 14 Palestinian liberation groups in Gaza right now, and I just don't believe they're going to agree to disarm. Because there are those committed, the Zionists are committed to rejecting a two-state solution. That's the long and the short of it. And I don't see any guarantees within this 20-point plan where security guarantees would be assured. I think United for Peace would be the way to go. With Trump, I mean, he's come out and said that on Friday that Israel has stopped the bombing. In fact, they haven't stopped the bombing. It's continuing. So I kind of look at it in respect to Israel being a cat's paw. In other words, I don't think they're acting on their own. I really do believe that behind it are those forces in the United States and in Europe that are ideologically committed, and they will even allow Israel, I think, to be a sacrificial lamb if it comes down to it. They're driven to a Pax Americana, if you will. In other words, there's a desperate fight for control of Pax Americana versus the BRICS. In other words, I think the BRICS and the fight between what would be a technocratic managerial class imposing order on the world versus a cooperative development amongst nations dedicated to cooperative development and sovereignty. And I think that's what's really driving all this. And so I think this is more of a PR campaign than anything.
Yeah. It has all the characteristics of a PR plan and none of the characteristics of an actual agreement between warring parties. It's funny because when you compare this to Ukraine, Trump has continually told Putin that he wants Putin to speak to Zelensky, and Putin and Zelensky have not come together. in part because, Putin is dominating that war effort, and Zelensky is not, at this point, under martial law for 2.5 years, he's not really the elected president anymore. He's the president in martial law. Martial law ends there. They have elections that are overdue. Zelensky will not be elected to that. So Putin says, well, I don't really want to deal with the Zelensky because he's not going to be around very long and I'm beating him. So what's the benefit? He needs to pretty much do what I tell him. And that's what Israel is doing to Gaza, in a sense that they're saying, well, I'm not dealing with your leadership because I don't like your leadership and I want them to go away. And there's nobody else for me to talk to, so I can't talk to anybody. And Trump is taking Israel's side in that relationship, saying, oh, yeah, well, we're going to make a peace deal. We're going to slam it down on top of Gaza and make it happen. But in the case of Ukraine, he's saying, oh, no, we should have Ukrainian input here. So there is no logical consistency in how Trump is approaching this. The other bad thing, of course, is Trump already let loose with his idea of a Gaza Riviera and a Trump hotel and a golf course and all these things in the land that is Gaza. And I think, I don't know if it's Ben Gazir or the other guy, the younger guy, Smotrich is a younger guy. Smotrich, I think, said in Israel that we have already cleared northern Gaza. That's what the bulldozers are for. We are what they call, we're almost building ready in real estate terms, in Trump's terms. I'm ready to start building my building. This is where they are at in Gaza. This is how Israel has always looked at that Gaza is theirs. They're going to get rid of the people that live there. They're going to smash down everything they have and build new. And this idea of the 20 points involvement with Qatar and I don't know if UAE is involved, but these guys are being invited as financial investors in this new Gaza, which is without Gazans. They are looking to take the land. This is very obvious from day one, and that's what they're doing. So if that's what they want and that's what they're doing, and Trump is in line with that because he is a real estate guy and he is a close relative of Jared Kushner. He's the son-in-law telling him all the great things we can do. And the big money people in the Emirates and in the oil wealthy parts of the Middle East. Yeah, we need to find a place to put our money, right? This is always the problem when you're oil rich. Where do we put our money? And Trump's like, yeah, you can put it here. We can rebuild this. And this idea that any of it's for the Gazans is like an afterthought. Oh, throw that in. Yeah, if the Gazans leave, they can come back. We're going to build stuff up good for the Gaza. No, I don't believe it. I don't think if you were making a deal and somebody came to you with this 20-point plan and you knew everything about the guy offering it, he didn't ask you for any input at all. He didn't want your input. And he said, you're not going to be part of the governing group of Gaza. I'm going to pick some other Palestinian that I like, not you. But I want you to sign this. No normal person would do it. But because the people are starved in Gaza and they're decimated and they have no shelter and their disease is beginning to be a problem, in addition to starvation, you've got people that are forced to agree. Well, that's not a peace treaty or anything like that. That is an unconditional surrender. And I think that's what has been presented to the Gazans, unconditional surrender, which is precisely how I believe Netanyahu will present it to anybody of his hard right that oppose this. He'll say, don't worry, guys, it's an unconditional surrender. Everybody knows that. So yeah, it's a shame. But if it stops killing, if it takes us off the momentum of this, the other thing is, and Netanyahu runs a huge risk here. This was the problem with the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. Why were all those people vetted? Why were they American soldiers and contractors with non-disclosure agreements that they had to sign? Why? Because Israel cannot have witnesses. Thank God for the internet. Thank God for cell phones. We have been witnessing what's been going on in Gaza. But once people go in larger numbers, Israel will be sunk, because a lot of people who haven't paid attention so far will see this and they will go, oh my God. And it will be totally intolerable. And the seed of pushing back against aiding Israel, the seed that's opposed to Netanyahu around the whole planet, That's already been planted. If people go in, independent people go in trying to rebuild, okay, they're going to move concrete. They're going to find skeletons. They're going to find decomposing bodies. They're going to take pictures, going to say, this is horrendous. How could this have happened? Well, we know how it happened. The U.S. made it happen. Israel wanted it, and we paid for it. So we know how it happened, but I don't think we really, and again, Israel cannot allow the world's eyes into exactly what they've done to Gaza and to Gazans. They cannot allow that. So where was that in the 20 points? It's nowhere. But they know that they cannot allow the actual truth about the horrendous genocide that they've conducted and hidden as best they could from the world. They can't allow that to get out. Even just the few things that I've seen from doctors that have gone there. And the one doctor, this is about a year ago, talking about the children with multiple shots to the head, multiple shots to the chest, some going in the same hole, like target practice of these children. That was very powerful. But people who see that are moved, but many people don't want to see that. But if they open up Gaza and it's a Gaza Riviera and, now we can travel to Israel, I think it's very dangerous for Netanyahu and his people. So I don't think they're going to allow it.
Well, thank you, Colonel. Well, let's welcome Reza John Vedadi. I'm glad he was able to join us. And Reza, maybe you could introduce yourself, because you haven't met Monty and Colonel Kwiatkowski. And also, at least we have Reza, who comes from West Asia, although he has lived in UK. But so we could hear from someone from that part of the world, his perspective on the 20 peace point plan.
With regarding to the plan, I come from the perspective, as you can see, I have a picture, I have the book of Imam Khomeini. I come from Iran originally. And so I've seen the world through the lens of the other side of how the empire works. How we look at the empire from beneath the boot as opposed to from above the boot. And every time we've seen the colonial project, Israel and its paymasters, UK and America, try to bring, as they say, peace to the world or change to the world in a positive way, especially to West Asia, it's always ended up somehow topsy-turvy, somehow upside down. So as much as I want for the Palestinian people and even the native Jewish and Christians that, lived in Palestine before the whole colonial project, Zionism, I want them to have peace. I generally don't think that America or even Europe, UK specifically, has any intention to bring a peace that is fair. And I noticed that President Donald Trump in his tweets has said, I want to be fair on both sides. And that's just laughable. He literally is providing the weapons, the political backup, support, and the military means to annihilate another group of people. So how can he be fair on either side? And, without going into what, the Zionist lobby has on him, blackmail, that's irrelevant. What we're looking at is the facts on the ground. That you have a number of presidents who've come over the decades from the United States that have maybe been nuanced in how they show their support for the Israeli project, but the support has always been there. So as much as I think that President Donald Trump, a lot of people are happy about the peace part of it, I'm also happy. I want less people to die. We can still see that Israelis are killing Palestinians. And so what the reality is, and Colonel, how do I refer to you? Sorry, Colonel or General? Colonel. So Colonel is a person who's been in the army, and she can attest that sometimes the reality, the facts are determined by power and force, unfortunately. And so that's why the Palestinians have resisted. The world has become unhappy and unaccepting of the Zionist project anymore on a general basis. In the last 2 years, many blood of the Palestinians had to be shed for this reality to take effect. And the fact is that it will have to be either internal collapse from the Israeli project, that it becomes not viable for those who are not native to Palestine but move there because of the project, and so then Israel can't be maintained the way it is. It has to be a combination of Palestinian and Jews and Christians to run that country, so it becomes one state. Or it will have to be a battle. If the Israelis attack Iran again, this time the Iranians have made clear there will be no red lines. They've stated this. The military, Amir Mousavi, who's head of the military, has clearly stated that there will be no red lines. And if Iran has stated that, they don't say things without actually following through. That means that it'll be battle to the death, unfortunately, on this occasion. And if that means that the Israelis may use a nuclear weapon or a tactical nuclear weapon, that may happen. And I think Iranians have that in their equation, that something like that may take effect. But then it won't be just Israel. It will be the whole region that will get to flame, because then Iran will have to attack American bases. American bases will have to counter against Iran. Iran will then have to seek support, or they will themselves join, then the allies of Iran, which is Yemen and Lebanon, Hezbollah, and the Iraqi Hashd al-Shadi. So the whole place will be engulfed in flame. And any vision of Saudi Arabia for 2030, any vision of Oman that I visit a lot, 2040, or anything of prosperity that was going towards that kind of direction, will just completely be wiped off the map, because it won't be just Iran and Israel and some bases in this region that will be fighting each other. The missiles will just go everywhere. So I just wanted to know from you guys what you think about the fact that if there is a war, and the second war, like if Israel attacks Iran again, to what extent do you believe that America is either supportive so they can get rid of Iran, or do they realize, because you're in the military, right? And so you have seen that you give facts to your generals and the generals give it to the people in authority. What they do with it is different. Does the president realize that he will set the whole place ablaze and impact America in a huge negative way? Does he comprehend that?
I don't think that President Trump comprehends it, and I don't think that our Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, I don't think he comprehends that. The generals probably do, because they listen to, the CENTCOM commander. I know that he's very Zionist, pro-Zionist. They always are, but they do have intelligence fed to them that they listen to. So they, I think, have an advantage over Trump, who isn't really listening, and he didn't know very much about this coming in to the he's very task oriented. Even when he was president the first time, he wanted to make a deal with the Taliban. There's no doubt about that, but he viewed that as a task that needed to be done, as a transactional agreement, and he almost had it. And of course the Washington people in Washington, of course, reversed that. They fought that, and later Biden did continue with it, but it was not very well planned. Trump views these things as jobs, as a job that he can do, that he an agreement, a contract that he can make. And he doesn't have the deep background history. He doesn't when he's in a room with people that he's shaking hands with, he's trying to come to the positive. He wants to make something positive. He does not come to it, like you said, from underneath the boot. He doesn't see it that way. He sees it from the top. And that's a very different view than what you get. And also, he doesn't really know very much about Israel's history. And, Trump grew up in New York. He's a New Yorker. Many friends are Jewish Zionists, like Steve Witkoff, a great friend of his, known him for a long time, trust him, good guy, good American Jew, great. But American Jews also do not know the history and the activities that go on in Israel. They don't have insight. So he says, well, I'm talking to Witkoff. Witkoff is telling me this is good. We can do this. Witkoff knows nothing. Just because he's Jewish, you're not born with a knowledge of the history of the region. You have to learn that. And American Jews are very protected from a objective history of the founding of Israel and how it works there. So Trump is ill-informed. if he's ill-informed, then he could stumble into a nuclear exchange of some sort, in a well-meaning attempt to prevent Israel from being turned into ashes. He could, this is, I don't trust that Trump has the knowledge base to do it. I think he will, if push comes to shove, he'll be very reactive, and that's not necessarily, that's not good. That's not healthy for Americans, quite frankly.
Just a quick follow back before I pass it to someone else. Other than Trump, there must be other mechanisms in the United States that guide what the outcome or the decision making situation is, right? I mean,
well,
the Secretary of State, but he's pro Israel.
Our Secretary of State also very unqualified and pro-Zionist anyway. So even if he was qualified, his attitude is very much, I will defend Israel to the death. The Congress, unfortunately, unless they're extremely frightened of something else, are mainly frightened of Israel. Okay, they're mainly frightened of AIPAC. They're going to do what AIPAC says. They do not want to be called anti-Semitic. They do not want to be to be primaried in their races. They don't want to lose donations. So our Congress, and you can say, well, we have a constitution. The United States is not supposed to go to war unless there's a constitutional declaration of war. We haven't had that since World War II, but we've been at war every single year since then with some country and multiple countries. So it would be nice to think that the United States has checks and balances on their foreign policy, but our Constitution grants the foreign policy decisions to the executive, and then we elect people who really they don't run on foreign policy. Trump ran on putting America first and stopping interventions, pulling the troops back. And then as soon as he got into office, what does he do? Nothing. He does not do anything that he said because he is not really armed with the kind of background where he can make the case. He said, well, Americans don't want war, so I'll say I'm against war. But he has no concept of how you actually prevent war, especially when you're allying with a Sparta state, a little state of a nasty little Sparta. And that's what you're dealing with Israel. And they will, we were talking a bit about the Samson option. Israel has no friends. The United States is not Israel's friend. We're only useful to Israel. If we become no longer useful to Israel as a source of political backing, cash, weapons, top cover, whatever it is, we're not useful to them. We are an enemy. And you could ask probably, let's say there's 7.5 million Jews in Israel right now. 7.25 million of those Jews will say, cut America off. If they're not going to help us, they're our enemy. So I don't see where we could avoid it by our institutions. Our institutions are weak when it comes to this, and our president is not well informed, and neither are the people he listens to. Rubio, have you watched Rubio? Not even about the Middle East. Rubio is not very bright. Okay, I mean, he might be okay. I think he's probably slightly above average because he's been a successful human being. He knows nothing. He knows no history. I don't know why they put him in as Secretary of State. Probably because of Israel. He's devoted to Israel. There's no doubt. But he's not a guy that could give useful advice to the president. And there's only one I can think of, and that's Tulsi Gabbard. She's also a Zionist, the National Intelligence Officer. Tulsi Gabbard. He appointed her. She is pro-peace. She fought in Iraq. She knows the stupidity and the lies that went into our wars. But when she told the truth and said Iran back in before the 12-day war, Tulsi said, hey, they don't have a nuclear weapon now, and they won't have it for some years. And that's if nothing else changes. This is the facts. So Trump said, oh, whatever, we're going to do a 12-day war. He does it. And they asked him, and he goes, oh, I don't have to pay attention to her. Well, she's the only one that knows anything. So it's not a good thing. But, Trump does listen to people he respects, like Putin. He really does respect Putin. He wants Putin to like him, and Putin's playing it perfectly because Putin is very respectful to Trump, and he does admire the things that you can't admire about Trump, his strength, his big picture thinking. I think a lot of people can like that. So you've got Putin and also the Chinese Prime Minister Xi. These are the people that Trump believes are his peers. Okay. And Netanyahu, but Netanyahu is like your cousin. He's like your bad cousin. You're stuck with him. You know, they fight every once in a while. But I think the other major powers, some of the BRICS powers, could play a role in helping Trump negotiate what he's gotten himself into. Because, well, now again, let's say those 20 points are perfect. We don't need appendices or chapters because everybody's going to agree on how it's all implemented, how every 20 point is implemented. Let's say that happens. Let's say Israel does what they're supposed to do. Well, we shouldn't have a war, right? I mean, if they really, in good faith, entered into an agreement, we shouldn't have this war. But I'll tell you, Colonel McGregor, Colonel McGregor, he's on Judge Knapp and other people too, all predicting another confrontation with Iran, another, whether it's a decapitation sneak attack and then followed by volleys, whatever, they're expecting it. Everyone is expecting it by the end of the year. And that's very dangerous. It's very dangerous.
I agree. I do think that there will be conflict because Israel is on the precipice of complete destruction because of what it's done. And so it's I've noticed people say when we discussed it, like they're attacking Qatar, they're attacking Syria, they're attacking, why they're acting so violently and irrationally. I said, from your outside, because you're thinking logically, you think it's irrational. But if you put yourself into the mind of an animal that knows it's surrounded and it's going to be attacked, or its leg is caught in a trap, it will cling at everything to survive. And that's what Israel is doing. So for it to now, for some reason, persuade President Trump and the US government to assist it in attacking Iran makes sense, because that's the only thing that will keep it going. Because if there's no US support, literally it will collapse within weeks. There's nothing that will maintain its structure. So that's why I think, like you said, all the persons that you mentioned, I watch all of you guys and on the different podcasts, and I follow you, and what you guys say is absolutely true, that the war will come, just when we don't know. I pray it doesn't, because I was in Iran when the 1980s war with Saddam and Iraq took place, and my hometown was as the first town that got invaded. So we lived in Khuzestan, Khorramshahr. We lived on one side of the Arab, and my mum would hear explosions in the afternoon. She'll come out, she didn't see anything. Then my dad will drive up, to the house and get the kids into the car. So we were I was 2.5 years old. We got into the car and we drove to the other side of the town, and the tanks will start. War is good for anyone. I wouldn't wish it on even my worst enemy. But if the Israeli government sees that it has no other choice but to try and destroy Iran to maintain itself and keep itself alive, and I don't think it's just a Netanyahu problem. I generally think it's a Israeli Zionist problem that is, I can't say every single Israeli, but most of them support whatever has to be done for that country to survive. And if that means killing as many people as possible, that's really sad. All the protests that we see in Israel is not for the war to stop because they care about Palestinians, is because they want a ceasefire so that their hostages can come back. So, so Israel as a nation, unfortunately, has gone to the part where it's difficult for you to have two-state solution, because there's no other state left other than Israel. They've literally created a one-state solution for themselves. If they had stopped in 1967 at that borders and not, all the occupation into the West Bank and so forth, there could have been an argument, and the Saudi would have supported it. They have lots of money, a lot of political influence. They don't have military influence, but political finance, and the Qataris. But now they're like, okay, two-state solution. What two-state? It's literally little islands that are tiny. How are they going to become a country? So we just hold our breath and hope that America sees that Israel is a sinking ship, and if they do attack, it either they do what with President Trump did, which is just a few bombs here and there, and then step back, or just not get involved and let Israel. But the problem is, I feel that Israel is, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but Israel is an extension of the foreign policy of the United States and the UK.
Yeah.
So they're not doing it. They're not doing it out of people are always saying that, Israel controls America. I don't think that's the case.
That's right. And people elected Trump twice now, both times to end the empire, to bring troops home. But the policy, the colonialism, the second phase or third phase of colonialism is us, the Brits a little bit, but using allies to certainly what we've done to the Middle East in the past 30 years. I mean, that's an obsession. It's an obsession, but it's also a foreign policy. And that foreign policy really hasn't changed. But, Israel is suffering economically. Nobody's going to tourism. The tourism is not happening. I know Intel, right before Trump decided he was going to have the U.S. government purchase 10% of Intel stock so they could be a non-voting member of the board. Right before that happened, he was very upset with the head of Intel. And one of the things that guy had done 5 days before it came out that Trump was mad at him was he closed down, 2,500 positions that Intel had in a chip factory in Israel. And that chip factory wasn't targeted in the 12-day war, but stuff around it, I think, was. So it was in a war zone. Of course, Israel's not very big. It's a war zone. They were receiving bombs and destruction. And Intel, of course, wasn't doing well anyway. And the guy with the Chinese name, he's a Filipino American, I think. Anyway, he had cut jobs around in various places that Intel has factories. One of them was in the high-tech district of Israel. And I can't remember the name of the town. Anyway, right after that, Trump goes in and puts 10% of it. I haven't checked to see if they're going to restore chip manufacturing, but I'm telling you, Israel is suffering terribly. And here's the problem with the BDS movement, which has been going on for a long time. And of course, got a big boost with what they're doing in Gaza. But also anti-Israel perspectives have been growing so rapidly, particularly since October 7th, but they had been growing before. And things like that can sometimes balloon rapidly. And I think the anti-Israel sentiment ballooned rapidly. The problem is you can't just pop the balloon and now it's all going to go back the way it was. It is not going back to the way it was, because once a person, individuals, companies, once they change their mind based on data and evidence that has convinced them that I don't want to do business with Israel, I will not buy Israeli-made products, I will not support weapons manufacturers or bulldozer manufacturers, I'm going to divest. Once you've made that decision, we're human beings. Check that box, move on to the next decision. We're not revisiting that. So this movement hurts Israel, not just in the past couple of years, not just today. It cannot be reversed. Israel is suffering. So, which means it's not so great to go to Israel. I don't want to travel there. There's many other places to travel. I don't need to buy Israeli products. I have found new sources for what I need. I've moved on. And I think many in the world has moved on. And I do think the animal in a trap, or the desperate trapped animal, and I live on a farm, so I know what you're talking about in person. This is what Israel is exhibiting, which is dangerous for us too, because we don't see it. Americans don't really see that. We think everything's like it was. It's not like it was. Israelis are desperate. And also they're, like you said, you hate to say a whole bunch of people are hateful, but in fact, what many Israelis, the vast majority of them, are taught, and what they're not taught, makes them believe a certain thing that the world is not true. It's not true. They believe that they have every right to kill people of a certain religion or ethnicity. They believe if a rock is thrown, you can kill the person who threw the rock. They believe that. Now, as Christians don't believe that. Okay. An average Christian, he has to turn the other cheek. I'm not saying Christians aren't violent and they don't turn the other cheek, but they're taught to do it. But Israelis are not taught to turn the other cheek. They are taught what Netanyahu has said. If you harm Israel, we will come after you 7 times harder, 70 times harder. So this attitude is destructive. It's dangerous, and it's not an attitude that builds friends. So who in the Middle East would like to work with Israel? Who really wants to work with people like that? Who really wants to work with a government that is so obviously in for itself and its own survival? You can't cut deals with a government like that. They do not care about you. They do not respect the other people in the contract. So it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough for them. And I think 20 years from now, my ideal, let's give Israel a city-state. Let them withdraw like Sparta collapsed. Let's go back to a city-state on the Med in northern Israel, whatever, eastern or western Israel on the beach, couple beach towns, put a big wall around it, and your 9 million people can live there quite comfortably. And they can be all the racist Zionists they want to be. It's not a problem. And then there is room for a Palestinian state, a huge Palestinian state. And that's all that it ever should have been, was a city state. Because I know I'm probably wasting time here, but I'm a farmer, and I grew up a farmer, and that's what I do now. And I'm telling you, the people that populated Israel, I always thought it was shocking that they made kibbutzes, and they had kibbutzes with farms and gardens. And then they put city people from Germany and Belgium and France and all these places, urbanites who hadn't grown anything at all, and said, now you can go live in a commune and you can farm. It's almost like punishment. It's not something that they were. No, I mean, it wouldn't be punishment for me. I mean, a commune part would be, but I like digging in the dirt. I like growing things. I like taking care of animals. That's what I do. But to take city people who have never done that and put them in a foreign country, which was a foreign country for them as Europeans, and then make them farm and dig in the dirt. What a sacrifice they must have felt this was a terrible thing they're doing. But they're not suited for country life. They're not suited for country life. They are suited for urban life. And how they talk about Gaza can be another city like Dubai. Well, it can't be, and it shouldn't be. But I can imagine a city like Dubai within the 67 borders, but probably half of that, maybe a fourth of that, and have a city or two that are trading cities, wealthy cities, places where, because there's room for all kinds of people in the world. Absolutely room for them. And Israel's trying to force something that is really not even natural for European Jews. This is not their heritage. And I'm not saying 2,000 years ago. That's a joke. But I'm talking about in the 40s and the 50s, when you guys moved from devastated urban areas of Europe and you came down and started to try to grow things, you were kind of out of place. This was forced, artificial. And I'm all for things that make sense. Israel does not make sense to me at all. It would make sense as a much smaller urban mini Dubai on the Mediterranean. That would be beautiful. And that could satisfy Zionist urges. And of course, they would be demilitarized. I see it as the Vatican. The Vatican has Swiss guards. I can think that the UN would provide security and they wouldn't have to do any military stuff at all. They could be a prosperous member of the global community. But they don't want that. They want to kill everybody. So it cannot last. It cannot persist like this. There has to be a real solution for people to live together peaceably.
Can I make 2 quick points before I pass it on, and then further what you stated about Israel? Israel is completely, that brand is completely burnt now. Be it a small state, a city state, the name Israel is completely negative brand that you don't need to use associated with anything anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So that if you're Israeli traveling abroad, people will not be happy with you. If no one will want to do business with you, especially after the point that you made that once the fighting stops and the clearing is done and the thousands and thousands of war crimes and people that will be found, this will haunt Israel worse than what happened to Nazi Germany. Because
Yes.
Nazi Germany was a country that got taken over by a group of people. Those people were removed. So Israel was implanted, as you said, unnaturally onto Palestine. Crimes that were committed. So Israel, And final point is US still has a ability to get out of this without completely burning itself with association with Israel. If it could negotiate with the powers that are in that region and have been in that region for 2, 3, 4, 5,000 years, such as Egypt and Iran, they could still maintain, because Iranian, you probably know, the government of Iran really wanted to deal with America badly.
Yes.
To do business, to do trade, investment, both ways, Iran in America and America in Iran. But America at every single stage has, with the JCPOA and then Donald Trump leaving it, and then just recently in June where they wanted to sign a deal where sanctions will be removed and Iran will put limitations on its nuclear whatever. Iranian government, especially the reformist ones, the liberal ones, they really, really want to do a deal with the United States. They really love the United States. They look up to the United States. They've studied there, so they love, and America, every point, instead of saying, okay, I've got a group of people who are running the country who really like us, we can get the best deal out of them. They keep scattering it. And so every time they do that, what do? They empower those people who said, didn't we tell you that you can't trust the United States?
That's right.
So the people, that's why when the negotiations were happening and then the attack happened, people were coming in support of the military and the leader Ayatollah Khamenei, where they wouldn't have done a week before that.
That's right.
Because they realized that no matter what we try to do to negotiate with the U.S. government, they don't have a problem with the U.S. people, but with the U.S. government, they keep backstabbing us. There's no point. So if America was smart, they're like, okay, let's cut our losses. We tried this for 40, 50 years with the Israel project. It didn't work. The world is shifting. Economy, military power is moving from the West back to the East, where it came about 400-500 years ago. We can still negotiate a powerful position for ourselves as a big player without completely burning ourselves by this complete and illogical support of the Israeli project.
Yeah.
Because once the Israeli project sinks as a ship, it will be, if it's anchored to whatever it's anchored to, it'll pull that down as well.
That's right.
And I don't know if you're a Christian, but I genuinely believe, and we have this in Islamic teaching, that God listens to the prayers of the oppressed more than anyone else. If you're oppressed and you ask God, no matter if you have no one who to support you, but you have God and you pray to God, He will answer. And it may take time. He will do it in His own time, but He will answer it. I genuinely don't want America. I used to live in America for 4 or 5 months when I was younger. We did a student exchange in Florida. America is a great nation. It's a great people. I genuinely hope that they don't attach themselves to Israel to such a point that the prayer of the oppressed reaches the shores of the United States. Not because of any other country will attack it, but look at America right now with all the problems of internal problems that you have. Texas may go separate, California, all of, God forbid, civil war, anything like that. There's more weapons in America than there's, citizens. We've heard that how many times? So America doesn't need an enemy from outside to cause it problems.
No.
It itself could cause itself problems. So I don't know. Hopefully people in America will listen to, podcasts that you speak on and others that you mentioned, and they put pressure on their representatives, and slowly, those blocks that are controlled by the Zionists and, those kind of lobby groups are removed, and independent congressmen and senators come in, and they can then make a change that the country, the West, really needs. And I think America can lead other countries, especially France and Germany, and to some extent UK. UK is very independent in its malign activity around the world. It's been doing it for 400 years, and it's a specialist at it. But other countries like Germany and some extent France and other European countries, they look up to the United States. So America has the ability to influence them, even Japan and Australia. So fingers crossed.
Yeah. I wish that your advice could reach President Trump's ears, because what you're saying, though, really would appeal to him when he's calm, and the things that he likes to do. That would be very appealing to him, because I think it makes sense to him. And it's funny, not funny, but after the 12-day war ended, he named it the 12-day war. I don't know what that was about. But on the 13th day, he goes, or right after he dropped the bombs, the big bunker busters from the States, he dropped the bombs, and as soon as they landed, he goes, "Peace is we have peace. We have peace." And of course, that's crazy. But the debate here in getting more friends in the region, real friends, and not, I mean, nations can't have friends, but having people we can work with, people we can trade with, that makes everyone wealthier. That's the language I think Trump understands. And but I don't think anybody close to him is saying that at all. And of course, Israel pays a lot of money to AIPAC and elsewhere to make sure that no congressman will ever say a kind word about Iran ever. They always the enemy, and is not our enemy. It's never been our enemy. Well, maybe in 1953, but not any time in the past 70 years. Iran has not been our enemy. But that's the language that our Congress uses. So, but Trump doesn't care about Congress. So your words need to go directly to Trump. That would be very helpful to him, I think, to see it that way.
There's a lot that both of our countries can benefit from each other, you know.
That's right.
And Iranians have a natural affinity and affection for the United States.
Yeah.
Because when the UK came in and found the oil in Iran, they went to the United States to say, we need an accountant, and I forgot his name. He came and he tried to advise Iran on how to do the accounting for the country.
Oh, yeah.
The Qajar king, right? So 100 years ago. And even when you said 1953, Mossadegh actually Prime Minister Mossadegh liked the United States,
yeah,
and preferred the United States over the UK because the United States hadn't been tainted by 200 years, 300 years of empire and tyranny. It's just after Second World War, United States, I think, started to taste the flavor of power.
Yes.
And I said, okay, so coup d'etats work. I'll do it. The UK is inviting me to do coup d'etat in 1953. Let's try it out. And unfortunately, they liked it because it was an easy way of them bringing into power people that suited them.
And all those coup d'etats, there have been hundreds, really. They don't have to tell the American people until afterwards. And that's if they tell them at all. They can always deny it was, they say, oh, we didn't do that. So it's a secret kind of way of running a republic. We're supposed to have a republic. I mean, that's what the Constitution outlined. And yet they are running a secret imperial foreign policy out of the republic, and they never have to tell the people, anything. And that has got a lot of Americans upset over decades, and which is why Trump was elected. You know, a guy that the Republicans hated, and he used to be a Democrat, and he runs as a Republican, and the whole Republican Party in the first time hated him, said terrible things about Trump, but the people liked his message because he said, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm going to talk to you. And boy, did he talk. I don't know how honest he was, but he talked, and he really appealed to how Americans feel. We don't like our government. I don't care if you're a Democrat, Republican, I don't care who the president is. We are not happy with our government at all. And part of it is because it does things like what you've said. It's just been its practice.
I'd like to. Oh,
go ahead, Monty. No, last word.
I would just like to chime in with a trap that I think is being played. If you pull back the covers, how Trump is being lured into a trap. I mean, as people have said, you know, Trump is a businessman. He tries to think practically, and you can profile somebody like that wants to get a business deal through and get accolades for himself. You can profile them and find their weaknesses. And some of the weaknesses I see now is, you know, Trump was lured into a trap with Ukraine. He could have walked away and put it on Biden, but he didn't do that. And now he's stuck, and it's pretty well his war now. And now it's gone so far as he's threatening to deliver Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine, which could be used for nuke. So that's a crisis.
Yeah.
He got lured into a trap with Venezuela, whereas he's going to be a big guy, get a win here. But my God, we're bombing speedboats in international waters which goes against international law. I mean, if we truly thought they were drug running, I mean, a speedboat is 3,000 kilometers away from America's coast. Most certainly there's no proof of that. But now to the world, we're looked upon about arbitrarily just going in and blowing shit up. So I think Trump himself, I mean, where is he being played and how is he being played? And one example I would give on this is we recently had 800 generals brought to the United States, where they had this big announcement, right? A big hoo-ha and a big kind of pound your chest, and we're the greatest military ever. In fact, we're not. I mean, we've really lost our power. Our power really now comes through terrorist activities and kind of covert operations and so forth. We have 40 four-star generals now. In World War II, we had 7 four-star generals. In other words, the thing is just overbloated. And most of these generals, one way or another, are affiliated with the ideas of NATO, in other words, a globalist organization. And I'll give you one example. General Ben Hodges was U.S. commander in Europe, right? Affiliated with NATO. Back in May, during the Victory Day parade, in Moscow, he came out on mainstream media and announced that he believed that we ought to do a preemptive military strike on that parade as it being a military target.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Now, that would have been a court-martial offense. Did Trump come back at him? Hell no, he didn't, because the power these guys possess. Now you have a current general, Chris Donahue, and he's coming out on mainstream media saying NATO ought to attack and isolate and take over Kaliningrad. It would be an easy target. Another court-martial offense. And Trump backs down for that. So I think Trump is getting lured in by an apparatus, a military, industrial, academic complex, which is worldwide. And right now, we're facing a threat. Ukraine has apparatus and capability of causing disturbances in the United States. Certainly, if we attack Venezuela, we would cause disruption in the United States. The same with Iran. If we attacked Iran, it could cause, they could do false flag and blame it on the Muslims, blame it on this or blame it on that. And I think there really is a push, what you might call Operation Chaos, which was named after the same thing, Operation Chaos. Curtis LeMay, who ran Operation Phoenix in Vietnam, he came back to Los Angeles, head of the RAND Corporation, and ran what they called Operation Chaos in the early 1960s to disrupt the anti-war movement. So I think there's operations going on behind the scenes through this, what you might describe as a military industrial apparatus, military academic complex, which all works hand in hand internationally. And I think the covert side of NATO plays a key operation in that insofar as the secret armies left behind. In other words, within the United States, you have a combination of ideologues and profiteers and so forth that work together to really, what I think, to stop the ability of the United States cooperating with the BRICS nations for development. They have to break that up one way or another. And if they got to take down the United States with civil war and strife to do it, they would do that.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's definitely a lot going on in the military industrial complex. Very powerful. And the problem with Trump too is, he didn't serve in the military, but I believe he went to military school for a little while as a kid. And he has an undue respect for the uniform, these generals. Now, I don't think he likes all of them, but the right guy comes in and flatters him, he will listen to that guy only because he looks a certain way, because Trump is a superficial guy in some ways. He's but he does respect the military for no good reason. I think if you come up through the military and you're well informed, and you still respect the military, I at least will give you credit for that. Most people who come up through the military know very well how the military is and how our generals the generals are. And but Trump doesn't know that. So he thinks that they are qualified to speak on things like what country we should go to war next, and that kind of thing. That's dangerous. I think he's better this term than he was the first time. I think the first time he got burned a little bit, which was good. And I think the second time, but still, it's a powerful entity. And imagine if peace breaks out in the world, we're not going to need this massive set of weapons and this infrastructure that produces them. We will not need those. We can put that money into all the good things that countries and their people need. We can build infrastructure. We can have lower taxes. We can do everything we want to do if we weren't spending it all on making war and destroying stuff. They said the cost to rebuild Gaza, tiny little place, maybe 5 large cities total. The cost to rebuild, it's like almost $1 trillion to rebuild it. And that's after you clean up everything they've destroyed. War is so costly and destructive. The world would be so much better. I mean, just from an economic standpoint, if we could not fight with everybody and not try to steal things from people. Again, we all have the 10 commandments. And I think one of them is, thou shalt not steal. Why can't we just go with that one? I mean, it'd be nice if we say we can't kill either. But I would be happy just if we would stop stealing from each other. This would be good. Don't covet. That's another one. Don't look at what somebody else has and say that your country now needs to have that. I mean, that's the definition of colonialism, is coveting and stealing with a little bit of killing.
I think a lot of killing. That's what's happening. So let me hear Drago's last thoughts, please. Drago, you're muted.
Yeah, I just unmuted myself. Well, I mean, what can I say? I agree with everything that my respected speakers said. I mean, we definitely need more peace. We need more cooperation. The problem is, as Colonel said, there's this enormous machine that depends entirely on instability, on warfare, and a bunch of very powerful people know that this is a good way to not just, of course, to make a lot of money, but also maintain control over the vast majority of the planet. And as long as they're in power, unfortunately, it seems to me that peace is going to be a pipe dream. And because as I said, these people, it's in their interest to maintain the current chaos or even increase it and exacerbate the current problems. And I think we're going to see more of that. And there's this cumulative effect where other people, in order to protect themselves, they also need more weapons. And this is why Iran, which, for instance, didn't have any intention to acquire nuclear weapons, is going to acquire them at some point if it realizes that's the only way to survive. So this is the problem. Like these people know that they control the situation, not directly but indirectly, in a way where they can force others to do certain actions, to conduct certain policies and implement them in a way that's going to cause more instability. And I think this is why they're attacking. This is why, I mean, they know they can't defeat a country like Iran directly because it's just too big. But if you can make the Iranian leadership paranoid by attacking them, by conducting these sort of limited strikes, then you can have constant instability for decades to come. And I think this is the greatest issue. Obviously, I do have hope that reason is going to prevail over this. I just don't know when.
I'm just going to add one quick thing because Karen said that the military has taken over 4-star. In Iran, no general since the revolution has been awarded more than 2 stars. Because in Iran, the army is answerable to the government. And there's no military industrial complex in Iran. What Iran has done has reverted to the Revolutionary Guards that they are calling terrorists, because they weren't allowed to bring equipment to dig tunnels and do big infrastructure like dams. So the Sepah said, we will figure out how to do it because we have engineers. So they were answerable to the government to build the country. Exactly what you said. If the money is not used to bomb people,
right.
it could be used to build infrastructure of the United States, so that you guys are not falling behind China in high-speed rail and planes and airports and so forth.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, everyone. I think we've reached the top of the hour, but maybe here's one last question. So what can, and for Colonel and all others, what can a conscious citizen really do to get engaged in turning peace from just a mere slogan into an actionable movement? That would be a good one.
Well, you know, that's a hard question, but I think for, like, in our country, we have to just be informed. And maybe that goes for a lot of other countries too, but in the United States, so many Americans really still do not have a good idea of how their country interacts with the rest of the world. And a good example of that is Venezuela. So Venezuela is not running drugs into this country, okay? And if they are, I think they're number 17, right, of the top drug runners into the United States. Venezuela has a lot of oil. Venezuela is a target, no doubt. But Trump has said, and the administration, that we're fighting drugs in Venezuela. Well, a lot of Americans know that's not true, more than I could say knew 20 years ago. But there's still many Americans who say, oh, wow, I didn't realize that's where our drugs were coming from, our illegal drugs. I didn't realize it was all Venezuelan gangs that were causing our problem. And they take the word of the narrative and they accept it. And so the best thing we can do is talk about that to everybody that we know, and write about it and make podcasts like you're doing. But we need to be bold as human beings, as Americans, and talk freely. We have two main freedoms. All the rest are very limited. We have the First Amendment, very limited, but it exists. And it's better, I think, for Americans in a lot of places around the world. We can speak freely. We can communicate. And we have the Second Amendment, which we have no problem with. People have their guns and they like their guns, and that's fine. But guns are just tools. The First Amendment needs to be exercised by every single person. And the internet helps us do this to some extent because we can become informed. Even Wikipedia, which is run by the CIA, still today it is. It wasn't originally, but it is now. But it still is a good place to start if you just want to understand some history, because it's there. And so Americans can become better informed. And the more informed Americans get into what our history looks like, how we interoperate in the world, what we do, what we don't do, the more we stand for peace. It is just that simple. You don't have to say, oh, you have to be a part of this party or that party. No, you simply have to be a little bit more aware of what's happening and then talk about it and embrace it and continue to learn and exercise your First Amendment right. I honestly think, because the organization part will happen naturally. You know, there will be peace groups from this perspective. There'll be farmers for peace. There'll be all this. But the main thing we can do as individuals is improve what we can improve, which is the people that we can touch, the words that we say, and the things that we know to be true. So that's the best thing. So everybody watching this podcast and 100,000 similar podcasts is doing what they can do. They're becoming informed. And once you're informed, then depending on the situation, you can decide what you want to do. Do I want to boycott Israel? Yes. Yes, I do. Why? I know why. See, because I know enough to know that that's one thing I can do. Do I support AIPAC? No. Do I want to promote candidates that are honest and brave and put America first? I do. I do want to do that. It's not about the party. So I think we just have to become more informed and more brave, because we're not very brave. Americans, we talk a good line, but we're not really that brave. And we haven't really been under fire. We're a very protected population. So, and yet we have wonderful freedoms because of the people that founded our country made sure we would have some of those freedoms protected. So we have a great advantage. Americans have a huge advantage. We are allowed to become informed, and we can talk about it, and we can be brave, and we won't be thrown into jail in the middle of the night. At least today we won't be. And so I think we have to kind of do that. That's the only advice I have.
Thank you so much, Colonel.
There's a name for what you just described. It's called resistant media. Not media resistant, but resistant media. Because what you're doing is resisting, and you're using media to do your resisting. Resistant media.
For Colonel, and your Substack is under your name, Karen Kwiatkowski.substack.com. Correct? And thank you, Reza. You please invite the audience to your you have a new podcast or something.
Audience to join this program and listen to us here and wherever you guys are. I'm not important. The ideas that we discuss are important. As long as they hear the ideas, no matter whose mouth they hear it from, as long as it sparkles inspiration for them to go and research, like Colonel said, and then they learn themselves. That's the.
Thank you, John. And yes, Monty, please. Where do you want to invite our viewers?
Yes, I'm just residing in Mexico. I've got my Facebook account and LinkedIn account under Warren Monte Canel, so that's where I am.
Oh, and I always say we're vacationing at Monty's Mexico residence. And of course, let's go and visit Dragos Bosnich in Serbia. Invite them, please, Drago.
And you can come and
yeah, of course. I mean, everybody's more than welcome to Serbia whenever you're in Europe and Southeastern Europe specifically. Of course, I write for Breaks. I'm also a research fellow at the Center for Research on Globalization, headed by Professor Chasudovsky. I'm also an editor in several other media outlets, and I mean, I'm all over the place. And of course, I oftentimes come to your podcast. I'm a bit busy, so I don't always do it. But whenever I get the chance, I'm more than happy because you have some of the best guests out there.
Myself, Reza, you were inviting them to where?
No, I was saying one day, hopefully, you can all come to Iran and see Iran for yourselves.
Yes. Okay.
I'll be your host.
Thank you. I look forward to that. I look forward to all the different places. And I guess the nearest one I would visit would be Colonel Karen Kwiatkowski, because we're both living in the United States. And you could always connect with me, and please at gracesagra.com. Thank you so very much to Colonel and to all of you. Give you my hugs. Thank you. And to all our viewers, yes, please like, subscribe, and do always support all the people you like to support. Okay? And take care of yourselves and have a blessed day. Goodbye.